На любом этапе, at any stage of society, a state may appear. And this does not mean that the state itself is a stage in the development of society. Есть этап развития общества, да? То есть если у вас есть глисты, if you have worms, this does not mean that you and the worms are creating some new organism, that this is some new type of person. No, this is the same person, only infected with an internal parasite. Внутренним паразитом, да? То есть что мне надо сделать для того, чтобы я всегда... What do I need to do so that I and my descendants and our ruling group, this whole gang with which I came, so that they can always live at the expense of those who plow the land, raise cattle, and so on, so that they regularly carry some kind of share with which we will exist parasitically. That is, everything that we see today in the state is the answer to this question. And the lion's share of the answer to this question is concentrated in imitation, in painful activity. Ответ на этот вопрос, она сосредоточена в имитации полезной деятельности. Ничего, ну, собственно говоря, другого варианта. There is nothing. Well, strictly speaking, I have no other option to explain basic things, how to repeat them. It is clear that the reason is that I do not explain well, but the same questions constantly arise and are repeated. Some of them really, let's say, can, roughly speaking, be forgotten because they are related to immersion in the topic. For example, the question is, show me where all this is, or tell me how it will all be with your on-cap. These are questions. They are logical, natural. You can't blame people for asking them. These people are not stupid at all. But these questions are directly related to understanding the topic. Because when a person has already immersed himself, has already studied some literature, the answers to these questions become clear to him. And the simplest answer is that there is no need to answer these questions because no one knows how it will be there and what it will be. And it is impossible to draw an accurate picture of the future. The future is unpredictable. But the most important thing is that you and I do not have $1 million. That is, we are not building a business plan. This is the question you should ask people who sit and plan their business activities. For example, open a private military company. Let's imagine that there is no society in the sense that there is no state. That is, people want to do this business. And to them, when they have millions of dollars in their pockets and accordingly millions of dollars of risk, it is logical to ask them these questions. And it makes no sense to ask such questions to people who simply reason abstractly and do not risk anything, because even if they answer them, they will answer them completely differently from people who risk millions of dollars. But the fact is that in reality, the system will be implemented precisely by people who risk millions of dollars and not by those who simply reason abstractly like you and me. Therefore, if we want to know how it will be, that is, we must wait until it happens, when these people with millions do their job, because now we are talking abstractly and can only talk about the most general things, which in fact the libertarians talk about all sorts of security companies, about private roads. Walter Block once wrote a whole book, which we translated on this topic. As for the details of how patent law will work, how you will solve all these problems without it, they can only be answered at the most general level. We don't know exactly how this will be done, and thank God this must be said honestly. By the way, it would not be out of place to remember here that the communists were never caught in their description of communism. For some reason, it is generally accepted that the communists lured people with a bright future. Yes, this is true, but this picture of a bright future has never existed. It was only in the works of science fiction writers. Karl Marx himself did not write anything about this. He has one famous phrase where under communism, a person will do this in the morning and then go hunting. And in the evening, he will write critical articles. That is, this is all that Comrade Marx offered as a tempting picture of the future, knowing full well that if he paints such a complete picture, like Thomas More or something else, then it will be a deception. I don't know how honest Marx was, but in this matter, at least, he did not bother himself with this unnecessary and meaningless work. However, even without this, simply by denying what is, the imaginary sins of capitalism, socialism is a wonderful job. Everyone had the illusion that there was a certain picture of the future that the socialists, communists offered them, which, in fact, I repeat, did not exist. She was only in works of fiction. But if you are satisfied with the work of fiction, then there are works of fiction where authors who have different sympathy for the anarchic structure of society try to reproduce it from Heinlein. He is more of a Republican, but nevertheless to the different options of contractual jurisdictions that also appear. And they came to us, in fact, from science fiction. and only then began to be discussed seriously as a scientific topic. Well, I digress a little. Now let's talk about simple things like the science of a state, and of course, what minarchism is and how it differs from libertarianism. And why does all this always come up? Well, since it comes up, it means we need to talk about it. From my point of view, there is no better definition of the state than that given by Pingheimer as an organization of political methods. That is, you can, well, in science in general, a definition is that this is a thing that there can be many different ones. That is, somewhere one thing is emphasized, somewhere another is emphasized. Even in the exact sciences, there are different, for example, definitions, sometimes not where the thing is about simple things, but where the thing is about quite complex things. There are, for example, different formulations of some physical laws, as it would seem, a completely objective thing. You can, roughly speaking, measure it with a voltmeter. That is what everyone is used to. Well, and yet even here, there are different formulations of completely objective laws. I repeat once again, that act and their action can be physically observed. What can we say then about the social sciences, where the subject of study is always blurred, disappears, and there are many different theoretical pitches, some of which are simply useful, and some of which are less useful, and some of which are completely useless. And therefore, the approach to terminology, definitions, and various precise things that are supposedly inherent in the natural sciences. Again, I would like to emphasize once again that, in fact, no, it should be, let's say, utilitarian. That is, I accept this and recommend that everyone do it as, again, a set of these very theoretical jocks. That is, some will suit us here, others will suit us here. With the help of these, we will see this, but we will not see that. But these will help us give a more or less accurate picture. So if we are talking about the state, then it is precisely the state that is something. It has something that is not found in other organizations of society. So the most accurate definition is, from my point of view, Pentheimer's definition. It is both short and very capacious in its essence. That is the organization of political methods. In this case, of course, we need a decoding that says what a political method is, strictly speaking. And further from this, by the way, it will become clear to us how libertarianism differs from minarchism. That is, political methods, as is known, are methods of forceful appropriation of wealth. Pentheimer says there are two methods people can use to increase their wealth. And the first is its direct production and voluntary exchange. And the second is violent appropriation. The first is an economic method where people grow grain and then sell it to other people. And the second method is political. The state is an organization of political methods. That is what people need to do in order to implement these political methods, how they need to build it in order to introduce some kind of parasite into this society. All this is called the state in one general word. Yet, so this is a very capacious and clear concept. But here is not what is being missed, but it is not immediately visible unless you look closely. A question that is also often misleading is the question of technology. What I propose in this whole topic is to look at the state as the development of a certain technology. What technology? After all, technology is a recipe. How can I do something? I have an end goal. And how can I get it? How to cook borscht, for example. I need to boil water, cook some broth, etc. Add all sorts of fried carrots and beets. And I will get potatoes. And this recipe, which has a specific ultimate goal, is, strictly speaking, technology. So in the state, it is very important because the question may arise in the state where these political methods come from. So political methods are the implementation of technologies. And the technology itself answers the question of how can I safely and legally rob other people? How can I do what I should do so that I can do nothing, roughly speaking? And everyone brought me money and fed me so that I could feel good. Here is the answer to this question, and strictly speaking, in a technological sense. And if we solve this technology, we will end up with a state. That is the first and most important thing where it begins is to capture some territory with people. Because the human being has a main resource that is inexhaustible, as Julian Simon tells us, which in fact will feed me. That is, we are seizing territory. We are declaring ourselves the most. Well, of course, we will have to hit everyone over the head, but there is no need to kill everyone. And we say that they will pay regular tribute. In this case, the tribute turns into a tax. That is, the tax is when it is already within the state. Tribute is when one tribe pays another, but the other tribe lives separately. And here we already live together in a certain territory. That is, we are the conquerors and they are the conquered. And further technology is logically developing due to this situation. What do I need to do so that I and my descendants and our ruling group, this whole gang with which I came, so that they can always live at the expense of those who potter on the land, raise cattle, and so on, so that they regularly wear some kind of share with which we will exist parasitically? And that is, everything that we see in today's state is all the answer to this question. And the lion's share of the answer to this question is concentrated in the imitation of useful activity. That is, first of all, you need, of course, to deceive these people, deceive them regularly, because, of course, you cannot restrain them by force. That is, you can only hold a small territory. If you want a big empire, then no force will help you. You need ideology, you need religion to brainwash. That is, all these tools, propaganda, experts, censorship, and so on. That is, everything that we see in modern society. That's 90% of where this technology is taking us. That is, first of all, you need to make people believe that the state, you bring them some benefit, that there is no alternative to all this, and so on. That is, all this reveals the huge monster that exists in reality today. This is the state itself. There is a completely logical development of these same political methods, which again are easier to understand if we understand it as technology. In a world where the state already exists, that is, you no longer need to conquer anyone. Everyone has already been conquered. You only need, for example, to simply install this technology. That is, like, for example, the state of Israel. There were new states, they tell me, that did not arise through direct conquest. Of course, there were plenty, but that doesn't change anything. That is, they all reproduce the same technology, which begins, first of all, with ideological moments that it is impossible to live differently and must constantly be shared. The forces will take away part of your wealth without any agreement, because there is no other way. And then attempts to answer the question why, which are always so awkward and crooked. It is for this reason, because they are part of the deception and not part of the real problem. So here, this misunderstanding always arises, which the state considers as a separate phase or stage in the development of society. The same thing we've talked about many times. That is, there was a clan, there was a tribe, and after it came the state. The state is a kind of independent integrity. No. If we understand that the state is an organization of political methods, then we understand that the gang, the mafia, the rackets that exist on a certain territory are the same state. It is no different. It is simply different in size. In that the other gang considers it illegitimate. That is, if there is a state and it operates on the territory of the state, of course, considers rocket gangs illegitimate. But in fact, it is the same as a state, only from that point of view, it is kind of illegitimate. But it is still small, weak, so it seems to behave better than this big one. But nevertheless, yes, that is, it is all one and the same entity. So the trouble with modern social sciences is that they provide a historical sequence without giving the state a place in this historical sequence. If we understand the state as a parasitic structure, then we understand that it can arise at any time, let's say at any, really, let's say stage in any form. Well, let's say, so let's call it that, organized by the community. Because unfortunately, they take historical and other anthropological sciences seriously, as if they are not actually studying the forms of organization of human society. This is true. So they studied, it means, because they are driven by this story of Sophia, yes, that there were at first clans there, yes, relatively speaking, who wandered there, all sorts of hunter-gatherers, but then that means they appeared there, that means settled agriculture, although in reality this was not the case, but nevertheless, yes, I'm just retelling the official version now. So, and after that, more complex organizations appear there, such as policies and republics, which they already consider state, which they consider to be a state, although this is not so. But they no longer study what happened next, because then it all fits within the framework of the state. That is, relatively speaking, the Shamir state there 5,000 years ago and the current one are called by the same word. Yes, says Comrade Oppenheimer, and we seem to repeat after him. Indeed, in both there and in this, and in that case, there is this parasitic structure that we described, but the Shamir society itself and the modern post-industrial society, they are absolutely absolutely different. Yes, they are completely different, but they contain the same parasit. It is obviously impossible to consider both as a certain stage in the development of humanity, society, and so on. So a big hole exists in anthropology, sociology, and so on. Well, this is the period from the appearance, well, from the moment when the state had already become large enough for them to be noticed until today. That is, relatively speaking, from antiquity for a second to the present time, there is a big hole in attempts to describe these societies. That is, they simply do not describe them. That is, for them, whether ancient society or modern society, well, it's all the same thing. It's all described by the word state. Well, but in fact, even if we take these societies without a state, we see that they are all very different from each other. And companies, tribe and clans, polis and republic, there is what they call a city-state. Yes, that is, well, also a polis, only of a different type if we take, say, medieval cities of this type. Now, but this is all a community without a state. Well, we can say that at every stage a state can emerge here. That is, we know states with practically a tribal structure, such as Congo, the Congo Empire. Yes, when the Portuguese arrived there, it means that there was quite a slave-holding state there. Well, but it existed there at the, let's say, generic stage. Here, or more precisely tribal, yes, that is a more organized structure. Here, the Roman Republic turns into an empire, that is, turns into a state. Well, this does not happen in one fell swoop, but this process takes quite a long time. Here. Well, and so on, so on, so on. Yes, that is, at any stage, as it were, of society, maybe a state can appear. And this does not mean that the state itself is a stage in the development of society. Yes, that is, if you have worms, this does not mean that you and the worms are creating some new organism, that this is some new type of person. No, this is the same person, only that means infected with an internal parasite. Yes, that is, it is not a single entity. And so understanding this, understanding the nature of the state, is the difference that distinguishes libertarians from classical liberals. Because monarchism is just another name for classical liberalism.
И вот понимание вот этого, понимание природы государства, и есть то отличие, которое отличает либертарианцев от классических либералов. Потому что монархизм — это просто другое название для классического либерализма.